John Scott, Lindsey, Moppert, Jonathan Acosta, the entire gang here with the Channel 2 sports team because Bills hosting the Ravens Divisional round Sunday evening, 6:30 inside Highmark Stadium, a matchup that warrants full team coverage here. But we hope that it's not a similar script here, at least this team and the fan base does, from what we saw when the Bills and Ravens met earlier in the season, Week 4, a 35-10 blowout, something very uncharacteristic, the worst loss this season, and something you just don't see from a Sean McDermott team since his tenure as Bills head coach. They very rarely are losing by 3+ scores, and that's what happened in Baltimore. So the true question going into this Sunday, the rematch, Lindsey, is how much is this team taking from what went down in Baltimore in late September?
Yeah, John, I think Josh Allen, just talking about it today, said, of course you learn from things good and bad, but at the end of the day, he said, in that game, the Ravens had a good game plan. This weekend is going to come down to who executes their game plan the best.
Yeah, and I went back and watched that Week 4 matchup actually yesterday, and there were a few things that stood out. I think the Ravens had a good game plan thing sticks out because the Ravens simply out-executed the Bills in all three phases. They out-coached them, but they also out-executed them defensively, offensively. Defensively, they had a great plan with sending pressures and kind of confusing the Bills' offensive line, an offensive line that we've seen play so well throughout the season. Maybe their worst performance in that game against Baltimore. And then defensively, it was the level of physicality that the Ravens brought with their run game, especially with Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry set the tone on the very first play with that 87-yard touchdown run. So now we're here in mid-January, almost, 4 months removed from that game. Both teams are very different. And that's something that was a point made by some of the players, Spencer Brown, Daquan Jones, because the Bills didn't have Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, Taron Johnson in that game. But even Daquan Jones said, hey, the guys that stepped up in their place, they played pretty well. It's just something that the Bills coming into this game, they saw in Week 4, they have to be able to match that physicality from the Ravens, or else they're going to be prone to giving up 30-plus points like they did in Week 4.
I mean, it's natural. We understand. You watched the Bills all season. From that point forward, they looked bad in Houston the next week, and that's really where the season turned. Joe Brady, I think, really found his bag. They got Amari Cooper. They got healthier. The run defense, as we've hit the finish line here, has really shored up. I think one less yard allowed on average per play here. So they're shoring things up. They're a different team. The Ravens are also a different team, I think, offensively and defensively as well. This is just the natural thing. So I think all-encompassing in conclusion, you could still be afraid of Lamar Jackson. You certainly can still be afraid of trying to contain a guy like Derrick Henry. But these both are going to be different teams with a different product, I believe, Sunday evening.
Yeah, and something else that I wanted to add, and just thinking about, yesterday, looking at some of your notes and thinking back on that game a little bit in Week 4, was that trick play called, right? Yeah. And how that really, shifted the momentum. I remember we were going through some game footage, Josh Allen on the bench, throwing his head back, really just looking the most distraught I feel like I maybe have ever seen him. In terms of learning from that game, I think from a coaching standpoint as well, we have not seen anything of that sort kind of come out again to try and play with that. So that certainly as well, player side and coaching, taking some lessons from that game, you could say.
You're right. I think Sean McDermott learned a lot from that game. Joe Brady, to your point, I don't think we've seen any trick plays ever since then. This is a Bills offense that's good enough to where they can move the ball and score without the need for trick plays. And I think that's something that we've seen bear out throughout the course of the season. Even in a gotta-have-it situation, just put the ball in Josh Allen's hand and let him either QB sneak it or make something happen with his arm. Something else, though, the Bills were able to get yards when they were able to commit to the run in that game. They had to get away from the run because the game eventually got away from them. But we've seen the Bills be able to run the ball well throughout the course of this season. James Cook, especially in this last game against the Broncos, the Bills really leaned on that run game. It'll be interesting to see if this game stays more competitive, stays closer the way I think many people are expecting. Both teams are expecting a close game. If the Bills can have some more success with that run game in this game and not allow the Ravens to be able to basically pin their ears back and get after Josh Allen the way they did in that Week 4 loss.
Yeah, I mean, whoever punches first, if someone can land a blow or two out the gate first quarter like Baltimore did against the Bills in September, that changes the other side of things. Yeah. So that's what you want to do. If you can really land one or two body shots out the gate, that kind of dictates the rest of the fight for going to the boxing side of things here. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. the two MVP candidates here at the forefront. The ballot's already in. So whatever happens on Sunday night between these two, it will not affect who ultimately gets that honor at the end of the year. But it's so awesome that it's unfortunate it's the divisional round, but it's so awesome. And we'll see, you talk about being different from the first one. Will the game actually be dictated on the two star quarterbacks on the marquee headlining this game?
Yeah, and of course, Josh Allen today saying, I don't play against Lamar. I play against the defense, as you would expect him to say, but did say, it is exciting when you get to go up against and have a meeting like this. As you said, the votes are in. This is not going to be something that's decided this weekend, but obviously, online, the chatter, the talk, everyone knows how elite these two quarterbacks are. And Sean McDermott kind of giving each to their own today, saying that in terms of Lamar's level of play, how do you try to practice to contain him during the game? And he's like, well, there is only one Lamar Jackson. You can't necessarily replicate that. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like a good luck situation, So I think that just perfectly captures it all.
You can't replicate it. The Bills are going to try to approximate it this week. They brought in a quarterback, Anthony Brown, someone who spent time with both the Ravens and the Bills. He played in a Bills preseason game, I think, against Carolina this year. So they brought him in this week, and Sean McDermott said that they brought him in so that it's a more honest look for the defense. Instead of putting someone out there who's not a quarterback to someone who's mobile out there, well, they're going to have a lot more of that running element. If it's a quarterback like Anthony Brown who can throw and run the ball, it's a more honest look. And he's not going to replicate what Lamar Jackson does, but he's back there so he can give the defense a look of what Lamar does. He said the word conceptually. And I think that's probably the good word for McDermott to use this week because, to your point, no one can replicate what Lamar Jackson does. Even Josh Allen, he made the point that they're two separate talents, great talents, but separate talents. Lamar Jackson became the first quarterback this year to throw for 4,000 and run for 800 in the same season. So fans on their couch in the stadium, they're going to be tuned into an exciting game. But even though these are the two contenders for MVP, don't expect them to play in the exact same way because they're not the same quarterback.
I've been here long enough to remember Ray McCloud and Isaiah McKenzie as the choices to kind of mimic what Lamar Jackson could do on the practice field. They're going more of a conventional quarterback route heading into the divisional round. Lamar Jackson is number 1A. 1B is Derrick Henry, and he was the star in that first game against the Bills. 87-yard touchdown run out the gate, 199 yards total. I was going through his running log. It was 87 yards. Then they kind of held him in check. A lot of 3, 2, 0, and then he popped off like a 28 and a 35, and the next thing you know, it's a little more chunks, I think, as the team wore down as the game went on. But you get 199, you get 87 out the gate. He still had over 100 yards against them, but it's not like he was just ripping off 10 yards the entire time. And the Bills' run defense is better. And I know Daquan Jones addressed that, Terrell Bernard, other players addressing that here today, that, hey, we looked at the tape. It was tough, but we know what we did wrong. And even if you're doing it right, I think Derrick Henry can still beat you. But this is going to be a 1-2 punch that the league overall really this season has not figured out how to really minimize and contain.
Yeah, Derrick Henry is 35 years old, I believe. Is that correct? 35?
I think a little bit younger, but I think he's north of 30.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Anyway, I thought he was 35. Sorry, Derrick. But anyway, he is still a major force to be reckoned with. Josh Allen kind of talking about how great of a guy he is. I think we saw that, like them talking after the game and everything. Seems like a good friendship there. But he said he is so difficult to bring down. If you just look at him, he is such a big presence and guy. He's so hard to bring down, which is another great reason why having a guy like Taron Johnson back is really critical for this game.
Just makes it that much more important for the Bills to have that level of physicality. It's going to be a cold game. And I think tackling Derrick Henry is already tough as is. You go out there in temperatures that feel less than 10 degrees and you go try to tackle Derrick Henry. It takes a sort of almost like craziness, right? A sort of mentality to go out there and want to tackle Derrick Henry and bring him to the... You have the temperature for Sunday?
No, oh. I don't. You know what? I don't know where I got 35 from. Sorry, Derrick Henry, you are 31 years old, and it was actually just your birthday, so happy birthday.
He's been in the league so long and been doing it for so long that you say 35 and we believe it because that's how long he's been good in this league. It's interesting because with the Ravens, you almost see it through the Bills, right? The effect that having a good running game can have on the quarterback and the rest of the offense. James Cook, and when they're able to run the ball, the Bills, the play action is unstoppable. Going back and watching that Week 4 game, they set up everything with that 87-yard touchdown. The very first play of the next drive, a play-action screen where they get everyone going one way, and then they come back the other way and throw it to Zay Flowers, and it's a first down. Something that stood out from that game was, obviously, the guys that were missing. And so at linebacker, they had Nicholas Morrow and Balin Spector playing significant snaps. And they really struggled with how the Ravens had them going sideline to sideline, which is a reason why Dorian Williams stood out so well in that game, because he was everywhere. He even forced a fumble on Lamar Jackson in that game. You can't say that just having Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano at linebacker will be the difference and will guarantee the Bills' victory, but you have to say that they will have some sort of significant impact. Just the two main guys that the Bills have always had at linebacker, the two starters right there, they're also good at going sideline to sideline, so you have to imagine that will make some sort of a positive impact going up against that Ravens run offense.
Bills fans will always have ingrained in their mind when thinking of Derrick Henry, Josh Norman getting put in a body bag in that Monday night game years ago. Justice Hill, the other running back, is actually, as much as you focus on Derrick Henry running the football, it was Justice Hill out of the backfield that had over 70 yards receiving. It was those two, not Zay Flowers, not Mark Andrews, not Isaiah Likely. It was not Rashad Bateman. It was Justice Hill and Derrick Henry, the two running backs, in two different ways that were really the main problems for the Bills to deal with on the defensive side of things. Let's go to the offensive side of things for the Bills. And you touched on the running game, dictating the line of scrimmage. That's why they beat the Denver Broncos. That's an athletic, very productive and disruptive front. This is a big boy, Kyle Van Noy, other guys up in front. A different task, but equally as tall this weekend for the Bills' offensive line.
Yeah, and they had a tall task last weekend and really paid up to it. They were absolutely dominant, which again showed why James Cook had such a dominant day. I think really just need to kind of roll off of that momentum of last week and they understand what they're going up against. As you said, big guys up front, and this is why they are the powerhouse that they are.
And we haven't talked yet with Deion Dawkins this week, but we spoke with him after the win against Denver, already looking ahead to this Ravens game, because there wasn't a whole lot of kind of reflecting on the win against the Broncos, knowing the sort of team that was coming up. And he said these are the type of games that you want to play, and they look forward to playing against the best because they feel that they're the best. So for Deion Dawkins, who is open about wanting to be an all-pro, the offensive line considering themselves one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, I think they're looking forward to this challenge of going up against the only team that you can say really punched them in the mouth this year. I think they're, even though they might not say it out loud of the revenge factor and there's different stakes on the line in this one, they're looking forward to getting, I think, a second crack at this Baltimore defense.
Thank you. And
you could just talk. We're in the divisional round. I thought our chemistry was there, but okay, go.
The other point, too, is like that group, as you said, they're so internally motivated. And I feel like they're always reiterating, obviously, to be the best, you have to beat the best.
Right.
And if that means, there's no avoiding that. You need to just go head on. They know the challenge ahead, and I think they're going to be stoked for this.
We'll wrap up the Bills offense versus the Ravens defense. Kyle Hamilton played a lot of nickel. He's a fantastic player out of Notre Dame. And now they've pushed him more in the back end, and from all accounts, that has been a transformational thing with that entire secondary for Baltimore to allow him to be more of a ball hawk, more disruptive, inserted a couple other pieces in that secondary. So as the Bills offense now have Amari Cooper, hopefully have Khalil Shakir fully healthy, you're starting to see Curtis Samuel pop a little bit. The offense is different for the Bills than they were that night in Baltimore. The back end of the Ravens defense also attacking things differently as well. I just want to finish with this. Justin Tucker, widely considered the greatest kicker of his generation, he's not Justin Tucker anymore. And we do know how the Bills maybe lost the divisional round a year ago because their kicker couldn't make one. Do we believe that special teams is something worth noting and could ultimately be a factor in a game between two really good teams?
Absolutely. 2,000%. Special teams is always, there's a reason why you say, you play a complete game in all three phases, because that is critical. As you just said, that is, obviously you don't want to leave it up to that. You don't want to say, okay, a lot of the times teams will say we shouldn't have ever been in that position to begin with, but special teams is going to be critical. And as you said, kind of having a tougher time, it may just come down to that. Looking at both of these two offenses, it may just come down to a kick at the end. And if both teams are not on point, yeet.
To be frank, I think it would benefit the Bills to not have this game come down to special teams because the Ravens, over the course of their time with John Harbaugh, they've been a very good
special teams background in John Harbaugh.
Exactly. I remember the year they won the Super Bowl, Jacoby Jones had a kickoff return touchdown against the 49ers. Just that sort of level of good special teams. The Bills, on the other hand, we don't have to go too far. Last week, they had a fake punt converted on them. Right. We've seen Tyler Bass miss kicks in big situations. I believe he even missed a kick in that game in Baltimore, right? So we've seen special teams specifically hurt this team. Now, they look like they're going to be getting back Brandon Codrington for this game, but Khalil Shakir had a pretty good return against Denver, right? So there's elements of the Bills' special teams that will be good on a certain day. The special teams, though, we haven't really seen take over a game and you really leave a game saying the defense and offense wasn't there, but the special teams really rose in the return game and in the kicking game to lift this team to a win. So again, in a game that might be close, I don't think they want to let it come down to special teams because I would take the Ravens in that situation. So it's going to have to be something where the defense steps up, plays better than they did in week 4, and the offense, we've seen them put up 30 points so much at home this season. It's going to be a bar that they clear again, because if you're scoring 20, 21 points, I don't think it's going to be enough to beat this Ravens team.
Best case, we aren't talking about special teams at all after the game, and it's maybe more defense, offense. I'll wrap it with this. It's a narrative game for both sides of it. I don't have to tell you at home. There's a narrative a lot of you feel about Sean McDermott in the playoffs. Josh Allen, he's sensational, but this team has now lost in the division round 3 straight years. What happens if they do not get past here? And Lamar Jackson feeling the same thing. He's made an AFC championship game, but he too, with 2 MVPs, sensational, generational type guy, is also fighting the questions of whether or not playoff Lamar can be the same and mirror MVP regular season Lamar. Both sides of it, one side's going to come out a victor and the other is going to come out with a lot of criticism and questions. We will continue our coverage throughout the weekend, of course, Sunday after the game. With Jonathan Acosta, Lindsey Moppert, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.